Aquaman Origins of a Prince by Rich von Halt. Hades loomed behind Thanatos, his dark presence enveloping the space. Thanatos gazed at the blood-red ruby, mesmerized by its pulsing glow. Under your power? Thanatos smirked, his eyes never leaving the gem. Mind control over all of Atlantis. The implications hung heavy in the air, thick with possibility and danger. In the palace of Atlantis, joy burst forth like a bubbling spring. Laughter echoed through the halls, mingling with the clink of plates and glasses as servers wove through the crowd. Streamers fluttered in the breeze, their vibrant hues a perfect match for the celebratory mood. Queen Atlanta perched regally on her throne, surveying the festivities from the top of the staircase. In a bassinet beside her, newborn Orin slumbered peacefully, oblivious to the merriment surrounding him. Braze, Sona, and Ekula approached the throne, their faces alight with excitement. "Fabulous party, Atlanta!" Bress gushed, her eyes sparkling. Sona leaned in closer, eager. "Can we see the little guy?" Amla, the queen's mermaid servant, gently lifted the blanket, revealing Orin's cherubic face. Ekula cooed. "Oh my, he's so cute." Bress glanced around, a hint of concern creasing her brow. "I haven't seen Atlan." Atlanta smiled reassuringly. "He should be joining the party soon." The girls exchanged knowing glances, their smiles holding secrets only they shared. "Amla, please, come here," Atlanta called, her voice soft but commanding. The mermaid swam to her side. "Yes, your majesty?" "Get me the king." Atlan strode into the room, his presence commanding attention. He bent to kiss Orin's forehead, a tender gesture that belied his powerful stature. Turning, he embraced his other children, and Indigo, pulling them close. "I'm sorry," he murmured, regret tinging his words. "I have a meeting with the Conclave 12. Atlanta's brow furrowed. "But the celebration?" Atlan sighed. "I know. I won't be long." He turned to and Indigo, his gaze intense. "Take care of your little brother." As Atlan swept from the palace, Atlanta and the children watched, a sense of unease settling over them like a shroud. The celebration continued, but a shadow had fallen, a reminder that even in the midst of joy, duty called. Tierna na Oge, a hidden realm beneath the waves of the North Pacific Ocean, nestled under the shadow of Japan. Atlan, leader of the Conclave 12, strode into the chamber, purpose etched on his face. The rulers of the underwater cities gathered around the round table, their voices rising in heated debate. The air breathers, those who lived on land, had become a threat, dumping toxic waste into the once pristine ocean. Bree slammed her fist on the table. "If we don't do something, I'm going to have to move all my people to Atlantis." Sona nodded gravely. "Tons and tons of waste enters our cities every day." Ekula turned to Atlan, her eyes pleading. "We must do something, Atlan." Valana's voice joined the chorus. "Atlan, something must be done to help our people." Atlan stood, his head bowed under the weight of their words. Thanatos, leader of nether space, sat silently, his fingers caressing the red ruby in his lap. A gift from Hades, a means to control, to conquer. As Atlan prepared to speak, Thanatos rose, his movements slow and deliberate. "I'll tell you what must be done." He rubbed the ruby faster, its crimson glow pulsing in his palm. The leaders fell silent, their eyes glazing over, minds ensnared by Thanatos' power. Only Atlan remained unaffected, his gaze fixed on Thanatos, a growing sense of dread twisting in his gut. Thanatos' voice cut through the silence. "We are going to kill the air breathers. But first, we are going to kill you, and I will become king and take over Atlantis." Shock rippled through Atlan, his eyes widening in disbelief. The other leaders, their wills no longer their own, chanted in unison. "Yes, we must kill Atlan." Atlan's voice shook with a mixture of anger and fear. "Thanatos, what have you done? Why are they under your order? Is that the ruby of Hades? You know there are no communications with the gods." Thanatos remained silent, his eyes closing as he bowed his head. The leaders rose from their seats, their movements jerky, puppets on invisible strings. They surrounded Atlan, closing in, their faces devoid of emotion. Atlan's shout echoed through the chamber. "Thanatos, you can't!" But even as the words left his lips, he knew it was too late. The die had been cast, and the fate of Atlantis, of the entire underwater world, hung in the balance. The battle lines had been drawn, and Atlan found himself standing alone against a tide of darkness, a pawn in a game he never wished to play. In the palace of Atlantis, revelry reigned supreme. Laughter echoed off the walls as people celebrated, their glasses clinking and plates piled high with delicacies. Atlantis sat on the altar at the throne, cradling baby Orin in her arms, a picture of maternal love amidst the chaos. Suddenly, the doors of the palace burst open, the force slamming them against the walls. Silence descended, heavy and oppressive, as all eyes turned to the entrance. The Conclave 12 strode in, led by Thanatos, a twisted grin on his face. Atop his head rested the king's crown, the red ruby glinting menacingly. Over his right shoulder, Atlan's lifeless body hung like a macabre trophy. The rest of the Conclave 12 sprang into action, their weapons clashing against those of the common people. Screams rent the air, mingling with the metallic clang of swords and the sickening thud of bodies hitting the floor. Atlanta, her heart pounding, thrust baby Orin into the arms of her closest mermaid servant. "Amla, quickly wrap him in his golden fleece and send him to the light of the land. Go now." Amla clutched the precious bundle to her chest and fled, her tail propelling her through the water with urgency. Atlanta watched, her heart tearing as her only son disappeared into the depths. She steeled herself, turning to face Thanatos, his eyes glittering with malice. At the lighthouse point in San Diego, California, Amla surfaced, a wooden box clasped tightly in her arms. She placed it gently on the rocks near the lighthouse entrance, the golden fleece within protecting the innocent life inside. With a final glance, she dove beneath the waves, waiting, watching. Arthur Curry, a fisherman who called the shore his home, spotted the box from his boat. Curiosity piqued, he moored his vessel and approached, his eyes drawn to the golden metallic A emblazoned on the lid. As he lifted the cover, his breath caught in his throat. There, nestled in the folds of a golden fleece, lay a baby with hair like spun gold and eyes as blue as the clearest summer sky. Amazement etched on his weathered face, Arthur closed the lid and carried the box to his boat. Before stepping aboard, he placed the precious cargo inside, his mind reeling with questions. A flicker of movement in the water caught his eye, and he froze, his gaze locking onto the unmistakable form of a woman, her tail glinting beneath the surface. Mermaid Amla, realizing she had been spotted, dove deeper, her heart racing. She remained close enough to ensure Orin's safety, but far enough to avoid further detection. In the boat, the baby's cries pierced the night. Arthur cradled the child in his arms, rocking him gently. "Shh, it's okay. You are safe. What's your name?" The baby's wails subsided, his tiny fists grasping at Arthur's shirt. Arthur rummaged through the box, searching for any clue to the child's identity. Finding none, he smiled down at the little one. "It looks like you have no name. So, I will name you after myself, Arthur Joseph Curry, Jr." The words hung in the air, a promise, a new beginning. As Arthur held the child close, he couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would change his life forever. Little did he know, the fate of Atlantis, and perhaps the world, rested in the tiny hands of the baby he now called his own. 7 years had passed in the blink of an eye. Orin, now a curious and adventurous 7-year-old, found himself on a boat with his father, Arthur, who was engrossed in his fishing. The boat coasted along the gentle waves, the sun glinting off the water's surface. "Arthur, there are tidal waves. Don't go near the ledge. I almost got this one," Arthur cautioned, his attention focused on the fishing line. Suddenly, the boat lurched, tilting precariously. Water sloshed over the sides, drenching the deck. Orin, caught off guard, tumbled into the ocean, disappearing beneath the churning waves. "Arthur! Arthur!" Arthur's desperate cries echoed across the water. He scanned the surface, his heart pounding, but there was no sign of Orin. Frantic, he raced to the other side of the boat, his eyes locking onto the telltale bubbles rising from the depths. Without hesitation, Arthur dove into the water, his mind racing. "Oh no! Not a sign of my little boy anywhere! I'll have to come up for air and dive deeper." He surfaced, gulping lungfuls of air before plunging back into the depths. Again and again, he searched, his desperation growing with each passing second. And then, an astonishing sight greeted him. There, on the ocean floor, sat Orin, playing with a sea turtle as if it were the most natural thing in the world. There he is, Arthur thought, relief washing over him. I took several dives, and he seems happier than ever. But the relief was short-lived. A shark, its sleek form cutting through the water, hurtled straight toward Orin. Arthur's heart seized, fear gripping his chest. In the next split second, however, he received the shock of his life. The shark, instead of attacking, began playing with Orin like an old friend, their laughter bubbling through the water. The shark, its powerful tail propelling them forward, carried Orin to the surface near the lighthouse. Arthur, his mind reeling, swam to the rocks where Orin now sat. He wrapped his arms around his son, holding him tight, as the shark's head briefly broke the surface before disappearing back into the depths. 8 years later, Orin, now 15 and known as AC among his high school peers, found himself at a swim competition. He had befriended Vic Bragg, the current champion, and as he lined up at the starting block, he caught sight of his father, Arthur, in the stands, waving proudly. The race began, and Orin surged through the water, his strokes precise and powerful. He pushed himself, increasing his speed by 10%, and touched the wall in a record-breaking 30 seconds. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Orin was swarmed by well-wishers, their congratulations ringing in his ears. In the hallway outside the locker room, Arthur waited, his face beaming with pride. "Arthur!" he called out as Orin approached, trophy in hand. Orin grinned, embracing his father. 30 seconds, can you believe it? Arthur's smile softened, a hint of concern in his eyes. "I am happy for you, Arthur, but we both know where you came from. You have this amazing gift. I think it's best you let some of your peers experience that same thrill you do. Be a team player that I know you are, son." Orin nodded, understanding dawning on his face. He leaned into his father's embrace as they walked out of the school, a silent agreement passing between them. Orin knew his gifts set him apart, but he also knew the value of empathy, of allowing others to shine. It was a lesson he would carry with him, a reminder that true strength lay not only in his abilities, but in his heart as well. 7 years had passed, and Orin, now a strapping 22-year-old, found himself out on the boat with his father, Arthur, as dawn broke over the horizon. The gentle rocking of the vessel lulled Orin, his eyelids heavy with sleep. "Ah," Orin yawned, stretching his arms above his head. "It's so early." Arthur, his weathered hands expertly baiting the fishing lines, chuckled. "I'm used to it. It's so peaceful at this time." Orin rubbed his eyes, fighting the urge to curl up on the deck and drift back to sleep. "I just want to go back to sleep." Arthur's tone turned serious. "Now, Arthur, you can't be sleeping in anymore. You're finishing college, and pretty soon you're going to be working. It's time you start making some changes." Orin sat up straighter, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Well, Dad, it's funny you say that. My career advisor landed a job for me because of my GPA and all." Arthur's eyebrows shot up, curiosity piqued. "Well, son, that's great. So what's the new gig?" "No A, in Coast City." "Coast City?" Arthur's voice carried a hint of surprise. "That's some miles away. You're going to commute?" Orin shook his head, his eyes meeting his father's. "No. I was actually thinking of living on my own, closer to the facility." Arthur's gaze dropped to the water, a flicker of sadness crossing his face. The fishing rod sat motionless, the lines dipping into the gentle waves. "Well," Arthur sighed, "it had to happen sometime. So what are you going to be doing at NOAA A?" Orin's face lit up with excitement. "Marine biology." They have me working in a department called the Sea Devils. It's pretty much scuba diving and studying sea life. Arthur couldn't help but smile. Well, you always loved the water. Suddenly, Arthur's fishing rod jerked, the line going taut. Quick, Arthur! I think I got one. Orin leaped from his seat, grabbing the rod alongside his father. They gritted their teeth, muscles straining as they fought to reel in their catch. Orin's own rod lay forgotten on the floor, the line bare of any bait. He never used it, refusing to harm any sea creature. Fishing was solely for his father's benefit. Holy macro, Arthur! I think it's a tuna, Arthur grunted, his face reddening with exertion. They heaved, their feet slipping on the deck, but the fish proved too strong. With a mighty splash, it broke free, sending Orin and Arthur tumbling to the floor. Ah, Arthur. He put up a good fight, and so did you. Arthur chuckled, picking himself up and dusting off his clothes. I don't think you were cut out for fishing, son. Orin, his breath coming in short gasps, grinned. Oh boy, that was tough. He made his way to the edge of the boat, peering into the water where the tuna had disappeared. Arthur busied himself with the fishing rods, straightening them up. It's okay, little buddy, Orin whispered, his voice carried by the wind. You go back home now. We're not going to hurt you. To Orin's astonishment, the tuna resurfaced, its gaze meeting his own. It nodded, as if understanding his words, before vanishing beneath the waves once more. Orin blinked, his eyes wide with disbelief. Arthur, oblivious to the exchange, picked up Orin's rod. Arthur, no wonder you never catch anything. Your line is bare. Orin shrugged, a sheepish smile on his face. He knew his heart lay not in the thrill of the catch, but in the wonder of the sea and the creatures that called it home. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Orin couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. His future awaited, a new chapter filled with the promise of discovery, and the chance to make a difference in the world he loved so dearly. Orin stepped into Noah, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Dane Dorrance, his supervisor, greeted him with a warm smile. Hello, Arthur. Welcome to Noah. Let me show you around before you get settled. Orin nodded, eagerness etched on his face. Hello. That sounds great. As they walked through the facility, Orin's mind raced with questions. He turned to Dane, his brow furrowed. So, Dane, are our jobs in danger because of the oil spill? Dane shook his head, his expression reassuring. No, but we are under investigation for the cause. It's being taken care of. All I know is that it was an accident. He gestured ahead. So here are some of the labs that we will be working in. Up ahead is OGRE. Orin's eyebrows shot up. OGRE? Dane chuckled, amused by Orin's reaction. Oil-generated reusable energy. They detect oil underwater and generate it for reusable energy. I know it sounds funny, but it takes a lot. Orin's interest peaked. Do we dive for them? Sometimes. As they approached the head of OGRE and the operations manager, Dane introduced them. Ah, here is the head of OGRE, Lieutenant Cal Durham, and operations manager Harry Black. Lieutenant Cal Durham, a Caucasian man in his 50s, and Harry Black, an African-American in his 40s, strode towards them. Orin extended his hand, shaking theirs firmly. Hi, I'm Arthur. Cal nodded. Hello, I'm Cal Durham. Orin turned to Harry. Hello, Arthur. Harry grinned. Hey, Harry Black. Dane interjected. I'm just giving Arthur a tour of the facility. As they continued their conversation, Harry Black slipped away, heading into a lab where Dr. Deering worked on a secret project, an underwater breathing serum known only to a select few. Harry leaned in, his voice low. Everything coming along? Dr. Deering, focused on the bubbling liquid before him, nodded. Everything is in place, just need a test subject. Harry's eyes glinted with determination. Let me take care of that. Dr. Deering hesitated, his gaze flicking to the serum. There are 2 ways to mix the solution, and you can show me when it's ready. With that, Harry left the lab, his mind churning with plans. The serum held the key to something greater, something that could change the game entirely. But for now, He had to play his cards close to his chest. Orin, oblivious to the machinations unfolding behind closed doors, continued his tour with Dane. The facility buzzed with activity, a hive of scientific discovery and innovation. Little did he know that beneath the surface, secrets lurked, waiting to be uncovered. As Orin immersed himself in his new surroundings, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the cusp of something extraordinary. The mysteries of the ocean called to him, and he knew that his journey at Noah would be filled with adventure, challenges, and perhaps even danger. But for now, he focused on the present, eager to learn and make his mark in the world of marine biology. In the bustling lunchroom of NoAA, Harry leaned forward, his voice low and conspiratorial. Paula, David, and Elliot huddled around the table, their attention fixed on their leader. Elliot stood nearby, sipping his coffee, his eyes narrowed in concentration. "We have a mission coming up," Harry announced, his words heavy with significance. David scoffed, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Oil! How exciting!" Paula shot him a look, her voice chiding. "Oh, come on, David, it can't be that bad." Elliot, ever the pragmatist, cut to the chase. "What's the job, Harry?" Harry paused, his gaze sweeping the room before continuing. "Well, this mission is different from the last." "How so?" Elliot pressed, his curiosity piqued. "Do you remember that serum?" David's eyes widened, his demeanor shifting from boredom to excitement. "Are you telling me we're going to get to use it?" Paula held up a hand, her voice calm and measured. "David, relax." Elliot, sensing the tension, delivered a swift kick to David's chair, a silent warning to keep his cool. As Harry delved into the details of the mission, Cal strode into the lunchroom, his presence commanding attention. He made his way to the coffee pot, pouring himself a steaming mug before turning to face the group. "So, Harry, you actually believe that there is an abundance of oil below Antarctica?" The rest of the team stared at Harry, their expressions a mix of disbelief and intrigue. Harry nodded, his confidence unwavering. "Yes, I think we need to dig deeper than the usual drilling." He took a sip of his coffee, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Who knows what we'll find down there?" Cal's brow furrowed, concern etched on his face. "You know we'll have to be extra careful. They're pinning this oil spill on us." Harry waved a dismissive hand. "Just because we were drilling near the area that blew up, that can't be our fault." Cal sighed, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. "I'll take care of the press, so we'll get the devils to take a look, and we'll get the contractor to start drilling." "No!" Harry's voice rang out, startling everyone in the room. All eyes turned to him, questioning, probing. Harry cleared his throat, backpedaling. I would like to keep this top secret, because of the press and all. And so if there is an abundance of oil, we can distribute it in an orderly fashion, don't you think?" Cal considered Harry's words, his mind churning with possibilities. "So who will go check it out?" Harry's gaze locked with Cal's, a glint of determination in his eyes. "We will, Lieutenant." The room fell silent, the gravity of the situation settling over them like a shroud. They knew the risks, the challenges that lay ahead. But they also knew the potential rewards, the chance to uncover something extraordinary. As they prepared for the mission, each member of the team grappled with their own doubts and fears. But they pushed forward, united by a common goal, a shared purpose. They were the Sea Devils, and they would stop at nothing to unravel the mysteries that lay beneath the ice. Little did they know that their journey would take them to the very edge of human endurance, testing their resolve and forcing them to confront the depths of their own souls. But for now, they focused on the task at hand, their minds set on the icy expanse of Antarctica and the secrets it held. Beneath the shimmering surface of the Pacific Ocean, Orin descended into a world of endless blue. His first dive with fellow classmate Vic Bragg and supervisor Dane had begun, and excitement coursed through his veins. As he monitored the pressure, a peculiar sound caught his attention, a high-pitched voice that seemed to flutter around him. Vic explored the depths in the distance, while Dane tracked their progress from the boat above. Orin, drawn by the mysterious voice, swam toward a nearby fish, its scales glinting in the filtered sunlight. He cupped the creature gently, marveling at its delicate beauty. A school of fish darted behind a coral reef, their movements a symphony of color and grace. Orin propelled himself toward the reef, the fish's chatter growing louder, more insistent. Suddenly, the speaker in his helmet crackled to life, Vic's voice breaking through the underwater silence. "Hey Arthur, it's beautiful down here, right?" Orin, lost in the wonder of the moment, replied absent-mindedly, "Yeah, Vic, beautiful." His attention remained fixed on the fish in his hands, its presence a soothing balm to his soul. As he neared the ocean floor, an old ship materialized behind the reef, its hull encrusted with barnacles and secrets. A shadow figure lurked nearby, beckoning, enticing. Orin, curiosity piqued, swam toward the ship, his heart pounding with anticipation. "Arthur, don't go off trail," Vic warned, his voice tinged with concern. Dane's voice crackled through the radio. "What's going on down there, Vic?" "It's Arthur. He went off trail. I'm going after him." Determination filled Dane's voice. "Oh, great. I'm coming down. Believe me, I know these waters like the back of my hand." "We're headed further south," Vic replied, his tone urgent. Dane plunged into the water, his expertise guiding him through the depths. "Arthur! Arthur, where are you?" Vic called out, his voice echoing through the vast expanse. Orin, consumed by the pursuit, swam faster, his mind racing. He spoke to himself, his words a whispered prayer. "Why can't I find her? Am I going crazy? I did see something." As he approached the ship, a figure emerged from the shadows, revealing a face and torso that defied belief. Orin froze, his eyes wide with shock. The woman, unencumbered by scuba gear, floated before him, her lips unmoving as she spoke directly into his mind. "Orin, I know you don't know how I'm doing this, but you must trust me. You are far more powerful than you think. You must meet me at the lighthouse point in San Diego tonight." A beam of light pierced the water, illuminating the woman's face. Orin spun around, shielding his eyes, and found Vic approaching, his expression a mix of worry and frustration. "Arthur, what are you doing getting off track? We don't know these waters at all. Dane is on his way down. I don't want him thinking we're incompetent. Come on." Orin, his mind reeling, swam toward Vic, his voice distant. "I thought I saw something." Together, they ascended to the surface, the weight of the encounter heavy on Orin's shoulders. Questions swirled in his mind, a maelstrom of confusion and intrigue. Who was the mysterious woman, and what secrets did she hold? As they broke through the surface, Orin knew that his journey had only just begun, and the lighthouse point held the key to unlocking the truth that lay hidden within the depths of his own being. In the Sea Devil's office at NOAA, Orin and Vic bustled about, gathering their belongings as they prepared to call it a day. The room hummed with the energy of a productive shift, the air thick with the scent of salt and the promise of adventure. Dane strode into the room, his presence commanding attention. He fixed Orin with a stern gaze. "Arthur, that's some stunt you pulled today." Orin ducked his head, a hint of shame coloring his cheeks. "Sorry about that. It won't happen again." Dane's expression softened, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. "No, Arthur, that's what will make you a great biologist. Just patch in next time." Relief washed over Orin, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Thanks." Dane nodded, his voice warm. "See you guys tomorrow." As Dane departed, Vic turned to Orin, a mischievous grin on his face. "Let's grab a drink, Arthur." Orin hesitated, his mind already drifting to other plans. "I'm actually going to go visit my dad." Vic shrugged, unfazed. "All right, see you tomorrow." In the ogre department, Harry, Paula, David, and Elliot hunched over their desks, lost in a sea of paperwork. The lab buzzed with activity, the whir of machines, and the scratch of pens filling the air. Paula glanced up, her brow furrowed. "Are we going to drill all the way to Antarctica?" David scoffed, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Yeah, Harry. If there is oil, it's probably frozen." Elliot, ever the pragmatist, interjected. That doesn't mean we can't thaw it, Dave. Harry pushed back from his desk, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Oh, guys, you all have been working here way too long. He perched on the window ledge, his gaze distant as he stared out at the vast expanse of the ocean. Are you aware of the myth of Atlantis? Laughter erupted from the group, their faces etched with disbelief. David rolled his eyes. That's a fairy tale, Paula chimed in, her voice skeptical. Wouldn't that be off the coast of Africa? David snorted. They had gold toilets. Harry held up a hand, silencing their mirth. His voice grew serious, a hint of reverence in his tone. Yes, we all know the city. Great. I believe the city is still very much alive, way underwater. It's been thousands of years since it sank. Elliot leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. Well, even if it is under Antarctica, all those unknown species take it over. What will you do if you find it? Harry's gaze locked with Elliot's, a fierce determination burning in his eyes. I'm going to live there. The room fell silent, the weight of Harry's words hanging heavy in the air. They knew him well enough to recognize the truth in his statement, the unwavering conviction that drove him. As they returned to their work, each lost in their own thoughts, the mystery of Atlantis lingered, a tantalizing possibility that danced just beyond their reach. For Harry, it was more than a myth, more than a dream. It was a destiny, a calling that pulled at his very soul. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the lab in a warm, golden glow, Harry knew that he would stop at nothing to uncover the secrets that lay hidden beneath the waves, to claim the lost city as his own. The night enveloped Lighthouse Point, a cloak of darkness broken only by the steady rhythm of the beacon above. Orin perched on the rocks, his eyes fixed on the water, searching for any sign of the mysterious woman who had captivated his thoughts. With a gentle touch, he traced swirls on the surface, watching as his reflection rippled and blurred. The silence pressed in, broken only by the gentle lapping of the waves against the shore. Suddenly, a splash shattered the stillness, and there she was, the woman from the depths, her arms resting on the rocks beside the lighthouse. Orin moved closer, his heart pounding in his chest. In the shimmering reflection of the water, he caught a glimpse of her fin, its iridescent scales catching the moonlight. Wonder filled his eyes, his mind struggling to comprehend the impossible. "Hello, Orin," she greeted, her voice a melody that danced on the night breeze. "Hey," Orin stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you a mermaid?" "Yes, I am." She finished his sentence, a knowing smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Orin shook his head, disbelief etched on his features. "I thought you were only in fairy tales." The mermaid's eyes sparkled with amusement. "Orin, there are fairy tale things in this world that you are not going to understand." "Orin," he repeated, the name echoing in his mind. "That's what I heard when I was underwater. Why do you keep calling me this?" She tilted her head, studying him intently. "You really have no idea, do you?" Orin stared back, his expression blank, a canvas waiting to be painted with the truth. And so, under the watchful gaze of the lighthouse, the mermaid spun a tale that shattered everything Orin thought he knew. She spoke of gods and kings, of ancient prophecies and destiny intertwined. Moments stretched into eternity as Orin grappled with the revelations, his mind reeling. "So Poseidon is my grandfather?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Yes," the mermaid confirmed, her tone gentle, yet firm. Orin drew a shaky breath. "So you want me to stop the evil tyrant underwater that has a spell cast over it and regain the throne of Atlantis?" The mermaid nodded, her eyes blazing with determination. "Yes. But first, you have to stop the oil drillers. They're killing all the sea life." Orin's brow furrowed, a newfound sense of purpose surging through his veins. "How do I find these men?" A cryptic smile danced on the mermaid's lips. "They are closer to you than you think." With those words, she slipped beneath the waves, leaving Orin alone with his thoughts. the weight of his destiny pressing down on his shoulders. As he stood there, the lighthouse casting its beam across the inky waters, Orin knew that his life would never be the same. The path before him was fraught with danger, with challenges he could scarcely imagine. But deep within his heart, a flicker of hope ignited, a spark that would grow into a raging inferno. He was Orin, grandson of Poseidon, rightful heir to the throne of Atlantis, and he would stop at nothing to protect the sea and all who called it home. With a final glance at the lighthouse, Orin turned his back on the shore, his steps carrying him toward a destiny that had been written in the stars long before he drew his first breath. The journey had begun, and he would not rest until the oceans were safe, and the crown of Atlantis rested upon his brow. In the Sea Devil's office at Noa, Orin sat at his desk, his mind consumed by the events of the previous night. The revelations, the destiny that had been thrust upon him, weighed heavily on his shoulders. He stared into the distance, lost in thought, as Vic bounded into the room, his energy palpable. "Hey Arthur, after lunch Dane and I are going out to shore. Are you going to join us?" Vic's voice cut through Orin's reverie, jolting him back to the present. Orin hesitated, his gaze still unfocused. "I might just stay here." Vic's eyes widened, a glimmer of excitement dancing in their depths. "Come on," Dane was telling me. "We're going to go deep in the Pacific. He believes there are pieces of Atlantis there." At the mention of Atlantis, Orin's head snapped up, his attention fully captured. "Atlantis?" Vic grinned, his enthusiasm infectious. "Get your gear." With those words, he vanished from the room, leaving Orin to grapple with the implications of their impending dive. Beneath the waves of the Pacific Ocean, Dane, Vic, and Orin swam, their flashlights piercing the inky darkness. They descended deeper and deeper, the pressure mounting with each passing foot. 80 feet below the surface, the world around them was a symphony of shadows and silence. Orin trailed behind Vic, fighting the urge to propel himself forward with his newfound abilities. Suddenly, a cry for help echoed through the depths, its urgency growing louder with each passing second. Orin froze, his instincts screaming at him to act. In a burst of speed that defied human capabilities, Orin shot towards the surface, covering the distance in mere seconds. As he broke through the waves, he saw a fisherman's ship, capsized and floundering in the churning sea. Without hesitation, Orin surged forward, his superhuman strength allowing him to flip the vessel right side up with a single, mighty heave. He gathered the struggling men, guiding them back to the safety of their ship. Dane and Vic, alerted by the commotion, surfaced moments later. They swam to Orin's side, their own efforts joining his as they ensured the fisherman's well-being. Days later, beneath a brilliant morning sky, the streets of San Diego thrummed with excitement. A sea of people gathered before City Hall, their voices rising in a chorus of celebration. On a raised platform, Jordan Weil, CEO of Noe, and Jerry Sanders, the mayor of San Diego, stood tall, their faces beaming with pride. "On this day, I present a key to the city to each of these men on behalf of San Diego." Jordan's voice boomed across the crowd. "The first medal goes to the supervisor of the Sea Devils of Noaa, Dane Dorrance." Dane strode forward, his steps confident and sure. He shook hands with the mayor and Jordan, accepting the award with a grateful smile. Flashes of cameras captured the moment, immortalizing his achievement. "Thank you, Dane," Jordan nodded, his gaze shifting to the next recipient. "The next award goes to a newcomer of the Sea Devils of Noah, Vic Bragg." Vic stepped up, his grin wide and infectious. He clasped hands with the dignitaries, his medal glinting in the sunlight as he posed for a photograph. "Congratulations, Vic." Jordan's voice softened, his eyes finding Orin in the crowd. "Last but not least, the next award goes to the rookie of the team, Arthur Curry. This man was first on the scene. Because of his courageous act, he inspires others to do so as well." Orin approached the platform, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and humility. He shook hands with the mayor and Jordan, accepting the award with a quiet grace. As the camera flashed, capturing the moment for posterity, Orin felt a sense of purpose settle over him, a mantle of responsibility that he knew he would bear for the rest of his days. Together, The three sea devils, the mayor, and Jordan posed for a final photograph, their smiles bright against the backdrop of the cheering crowd. And as the celebration parade wound its way through the streets of San Diego, Orin knew that this was only the beginning, a small taste of the adventures and challenges that lay ahead. For he was Orin, grandson of Poseidon, and his destiny was just beginning to unfold. In the Sea Devil's office at Noe, the once vibrant photograph from the previous day had faded to a stark black and white, its image now gracing the front page of a newspaper. Vic, his face a mask of frustration, tossed the paper onto Orin's desk, where it landed with a soft thud. Orin, lost in thought, barely registered the intrusion. "What's this?" "You made the paper," Vic snapped, his voice tight. "All the way in Metropolis." Metropolis. Orin's brow furrowed, confusion etched on his features. Vic nodded, his jaw clenched. "A new writer, by the name of Clark Kent, wrote this amazing article on us. I guess he was down here visiting and heard what you did." Orin reached for the newspaper, his eyes scanning the words, absorbing the praise and accolades bestowed upon him. "How did you know?" Vic's question cut through the silence, his tone accusatory. Orin glanced up, his expression guarded. "Know what?" "Come on, Arthur." Vic's voice rose, his frustration boiling over. "How did you know to turn back?" "We were 80 feet below." Orin hesitated, the truth dancing on the tip of his tongue. "I heard a cry for help." "A cry, huh?" Vic's words dripped with skepticism, his gaze boring into Orin's soul. The tension in the room thickened, the air heavy with unspoken accusations. Dane, sensing the brewing storm, entered the office, his presence a momentary reprieve. "That's a pretty good-looking picture, huh, Arthur?" Dane's voice was light, an attempt to diffuse the situation. Orin's eyes drifted to the photograph, the words beneath it catching his attention. "Photographed by Jimmy Olsen," he read aloud, his mind wandering. "Yeah, it is," he replied, his thoughts distant. Dane clapped a hand on Orin's shoulder, his faith unwavering. "You're going to make a great biologist one day. I already told you that, didn't I?" Orin nodded, his mind grappling with the weight of his newfound knowledge. "Hey, Dane, I have a question. Something off the subject." Dane's gaze locked with Orin's, his attention fully captured. Vic, still seething, watched the exchange with narrowed eyes. "Does Noe do any oil drilling?" Orin's question hung in the air, a bombshell waiting to detonate. Dane's expression remained neutral, his voice even. "Of course, you met some of the men the other day at Ogier." "How can I forget, Ogier?" Orin's words were laced with sarcasm, a hint of bitterness creeping into his tone. He stood abruptly, snatching the newspaper from his desk and tossing it down beside a well-worn book on Atlantis. The movement revealed the writer's name and a picture of Clark Kent, a face that would soon become synonymous with truth and justice. As Orin stalked from the room, his mind churned with the implications of his discovery. NOAA, the organization he had trusted, the one he had dedicated his life to, was involved in the very activities that threatened the oceans he loved. The weight of his destiny pressed down upon him, a mantle of responsibility that he could no longer ignore. He knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger, with challenges that would test his resolve and push him to the very limits of his abilities. But he was Orin, grandson of Poseidon, and he would not rest until the oceans were safe, until the throne of Atlantis was his. With a final glance at the newspaper, at the face of the man who had brought his story to the world, Orin stepped out into the sunlight, ready to face whatever lay ahead. In the Noe Ogre department, the night hung heavy, the clock ticking past 8 p.m. Orin, his footsteps echoing in the deserted hallway, made his way towards the lab door. Through the window, he glimpsed Cal, strapped to a gurney, his head immobilized. Machines whirred to life, injecting Cal with a mysterious serum. Orin's gaze drifted to the right, where 4 underwater scuba suits hung on the wall, each bearing the name of a team member: Paula, David, Elliot, and Harry. A voice, smooth as silk, startled Orin from his observations. "Hey son, see anything you like?" Orin spun, his heart racing. I'm just looking. Harry's smile held no warmth. We are conducting a top-secret experiment. Orin pointed at the scuba suits, his curiosity piqued. What are those for? Those are for diving. Harry's eyes narrowed. Arthur, right? Yeah. From the Sea Devils? Orin nodded, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. Yeah. Are those for us? Harry's laughter, cold and mocking, filled the room. No, that's why this is top secret. He gripped Orin's shoulders, steering him out of the department. As the door swung shut behind them, a scream, raw and agonized, tore through the air. Hours later, in the sanctuary of his apartment, Orin sat on his bed, the television droning in the background. His golden fleece, a relic from his infancy, lay before him, its secrets whispering to his soul. The anchor's voice, tinged with urgency, filled the room. In other news today, more animals were found covered in oil. The oil crisis is on day 86 and still no recovery. The cause for this crisis is still not yet discovered. Here is a list of animals that have been affected by this crisis. Dolphins, manatees, sea turtles, sharks, pelicans, crabs, and many of the fish. Orin's mind drifted to Amla's revelations, the weight of his heritage pressing down upon him. With deft movements, he fashioned a shirt from his golden fleece, donning it over his green scuba pants. He fastened his scuba belt, the golden A from his basket glinting in the light. At the stroke of midnight, Orin perched on the edge of the rocks at Lighthouse Point, his heart pounding in his chest. With a deep breath, he dove headfirst into the water, abandoning his scuba gear. Beneath the surface, 10 feet down, Orin opened his eyes, his cheeks puffed with held breath. Fear gripped him as he opened his mouth, the instinct to breathe warring with the reality of his surroundings. He surfaced near the lighthouse, clinging to the rocks, his mind reeling. Trust. Just trust, he whispered, a mantra to calm his racing heart. Steeling himself, Orin plunged back into the depths, descending 20 feet, then deeper still. He swam with inhuman speed, his body cutting through the water like a blade. As the ocean grew darker, an old ship, long since sunk, loomed before him. Orin circled the vessel, his breath still held tight in his lungs. Rounding the side, he froze, his eyes widening in terror. Sharks, their forms sleek and predatory, surrounded him. Orin pressed his back against the ship, his heart hammering in his chest. He swallowed hard, turning to face the nearest shark, its eyes boring into his own. Please don't eat me, Orin whispered, his voice trembling. The shark's nose brushed against Orin's face, a gentle touch that belied its fearsome reputation. Orin closed his eyes, turning his face away, his mind reeling with the impossibility of the moment. Orin, is that you? The shark's voice, deep and resonant, filled Orin's mind. Orin's eyes snapped open, realization dawning. He was breathing, underwater, without aid. Did you just say, Orin? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes, it is you, isn't it? The shark's words were filled with wonder, with recognition. Orin's mouth fell open, shock rippling through his body. The sharks, once a source of terror, now surrounded him, their presence a comforting embrace. No one is going to hurt you, Orin. Look around you. Everyone has been waiting for you. Orin, come with us, we'll show you around. The shark's invitation, warm and inviting, pulled at Orin's heart. With a nod, Orin joined the sharks, swimming alongside them, discovering a world he had never known existed. As he explored the depths, meeting the diverse array of sea life that called the ocean home, Orin felt a sense of belonging, of purpose, wash over him. He was Orin, grandson of Poseidon, and the ocean was his kingdom, his birthright. And as he swam, reveling in the freedom and wonder of the deep, he knew that his journey had only just begun. In the inky depths of the Pacific Ocean, the ogre submarine prowled, its mission cloaked in secrecy. Inside, Cal floated in a water tank, his body unencumbered by diving gear, a testament to the serum coursing through his veins. Harry, his eyes glinting with anticipation, turned to Dr. Deering. "I think it's time to release Cal to test his breathing levels." Cal, his face a mask of determination, gave a thumbs up, ready to embrace the unknown. Dr. Deering, his fingers poised over the control panel, awaited Harry's command. With a nod from his superior, he activated the mechanism, the floor panel beneath the tank sliding open, releasing Cal into the vast expanse of the ocean. Beneath the waves, Cal marveled at his newfound abilities, his body cutting through the water with effortless grace. He swam with a speed and agility that defied belief, his lungs drawing oxygen from the very water that surrounded him. Back on the submarine, Harry's voice crackled through the intercom. "Let the drilling begin." A colossal drill, controlled by Elliot's deft hands, emerged from the belly of the ship, its purpose clear. Harry, his conviction unwavering, believed they hovered directly above the lost city of Atlantis. Paula, her eyes fixed on the navigation screens, called out, "Still 30 feet above target." In the depths below, Cal guided the drill, his movements precise and calculated. Suddenly, the ocean floor trembled, a violent shudder that sent shockwaves through the water. Oil, black and viscous, erupted from the seabed, engulfing Cal in its suffocating embrace. Harry's voice, tinged with worry, crackled through the calm. "What's going on, Cal? Cal?" On the submarine, Paula's eyes widened. "Harry, we seem to have hit oil." David, his tone laced with admiration, chimed in. "Look at that. Harry knew something." Harry, his mind racing, barked orders. "Elliot, signal Cal to come back on board." Elliot obeyed, sending the command through the murky depths. Cal, his body slick with oil, swam through the airlock, giving a thumbs up to release him from the tank. Dr. Deering, his fingers flying over the controls, closed the panel beneath Cal and opened the tank, spilling water onto the ship's deck. In an instant, Cal's hands flew to his throat, his knees buckling beneath him. His skin, once flush with life, took on a sickly purple hue. Harry, his voice filled with urgency, demanded answers. "What's happening?" Elliot, his heart pounding, rushed to Cal's side, lifting him from the floor. Dr. Deering, his mind reeling, stammered, "I don't know, the serum must enable him only to breathe underwater." Harry, his frustration boiling over, snapped, "It was supposed to be reversible." With a determined stride, he marched to Dr. Deering's mini-lab, snatching the remaining serum and injecting it into his custom scuba suit. "Do I have to do everything myself?" he muttered, his voice dripping with disdain. Dr. Deering, his eyes wide with disbelief, questioned, "What are you doing with that?" Harry, his tone cold and calculating, explained, "Injecting it into my suit. Since it's not reversible, it will allow my suit to supply my oxygen underwater without gear. When I come back on the ship, I can just take it off and breathe normally." He strode towards the airlock, his helmet dangling from his hand. Elliot, his voice filled with concern, called out, "What about Cal?" Harry, his eyes devoid of empathy, replied, "Throw him back in the water." Without a backward glance, he donned his helmet and plunged into the ocean, leaving chaos and uncertainty in his wake. As the submarine shuddered and groaned, the weight of their actions bore down upon them, a suffocating presence that threatened to crush them all. And in the depths below, the lost city of Atlantis awaited, its secrets guarded by the very forces they sought to control. In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, Orin reveled in the wonders of the underwater world, his heart filled with joy as he explored alongside his newfound companions. Suddenly, a shockwave rippled through the water, its force palpable, ominous. Coral shattered, and oil, black and viscous, gushed from the ocean floor, a sickening testament to the destruction wrought by human hands. Orin and the sharks, their instincts sharp, swam toward the disturbance, their bodies cutting through the water with urgency. As they approached, the Ogier submarine came into view, its drill a monstrous intrusion in the delicate balance of the ocean. King Shark, his voice filled with desperation, pleaded, "Quick, Orin, you have to do something. They're killing us." Orin, his heart heavy with the weight of responsibility, surveyed the scene before him. Thousands of fish, their bodies lifeless, rose to the surface, victims of the relentless oil spill. The sharks and other sea creatures, their eyes wide with fear, looked to Orin for salvation. With a surge of superhuman strength, Orin propelled himself towards the submarine, his hands gripping its hull with a force that defied belief. He pushed, his muscles straining, until the vessel breached the surface, a behemoth rising from the depths. From the shadows, a figure emerged clad in a manta scuba suit. It was Harry, his presence a dark specter in the chaos. Oil gushed before him, obscuring Orin's view, as Harry swam further south, following the crack that snaked along the ocean floor. Orin, his determination unwavering, raced towards the gushing oil, his mind racing for a solution. A giant rock caught his eye, and with a Herculean effort, he lifted it, his muscles screaming with exertion. He dropped it onto the gushing oil, stemming the flow, a temporary reprieve in the face of an unrelenting disaster. Harry, oblivious to Orin's pursuit, swam through the coral, his path taking him deeper into the abyss. Metal rods rose from the ground, a stark contrast to the natural beauty that surrounded them. Harry swam over them, his eyes fixed on a giant hole that loomed before him. Darkness engulfed him as he entered the hole, his suit's tiny light bulbs illuminating the way. Dust particles swirled around him, a dance of the unknown. Suddenly, an underwater wave slammed into him, sending him tumbling, his back colliding with the ocean floor. As he raised his head, golden light rays pierced the darkness, their brilliance growing with each passing second. Harry, mesmerized, swam towards the source, his heart pounding with anticipation. And then, as if by magic, a golden city appeared before him, its magnificence stealing his breath. Atlantis, the lost city of legend, lay before him, its streets paved with gold and white, a testament to a civilization long forgotten. "I can't believe I found it," Harry whispered, his voice filled with awe. "Soon it will be all mine." "Not if I can help it." Orin's voice, strong and unwavering, cut through the stillness. Harry spun around, his eyes widening behind his helmet. Orin, his fists clenched, swung his arms, connecting with Harry's helmet in a resounding blow. Harry crumpled to the ground, his body limp. Orin, his heart racing, hoisted Harry over his shoulder, his mind set on reaching the surface. He swam, his speed increasing with each powerful stroke until he reached the site of the oil spill. With a final burst of strength, he propelled them both upwards, the momentum of the oil carrying them to the surface. As they broke through the waves, Orin knew that the battle had only just begun. Atlantis, the city of his ancestors, lay waiting, its secrets and treasures guarded by the very forces that sought to destroy it. And he, Orin, grandson of Poseidon, would stop at nothing to protect it, to fulfill his destiny and claim his rightful place as king. As dawn broke over the San Diego beach, the tranquility of the morning shattered by the sudden appearance of two figures shooting out of the water. Orin and Harry, propelled by the force of the oil spill, soared through the air, their bodies twisting and turning before plunging back into the waves. Orin, his senses sharp, wiped the salt water from his face and scanned his surroundings. Harry, still unconscious, floated face down in the water, his manta suit a dark shadow against the glistening surface. Orin, his muscles aching from the exertion, swam towards his adversary, grasping him firmly and dragging him to shore. The people on the beach, their eyes wide with amazement, watched in awe as Orin emerged from the water, Harry's limp form slung over his shoulder. The shore patrol, alerted by the commotion, arrived on the scene, their radios crackling with urgency. Police cars, their sirens wailing, screeched to a halt, their occupants leaping out to assess the situation. Orin, his voice steady and determined, handed Harry over to Officer Sam Makoa. "This man is the cause of the oil spill." Sam, his brow furrowed, sought confirmation. "This man is the cause of the oil spill that has been killing all the sea life?" Orin nodded, his eyes hardening. "Yes, I just caught him drilling. He almost caused another." Sam, his curiosity piqued, pressed further. "How did you catch him? Who are you?" Orin, his stance proud, replied, "I'm a sea devil from No AA. I'm Arthur Curry." Sam, his mind racing with questions, continued his interrogation. "So, where is the ship he was drilling from? How did you get to the shore?" Orin, his voice tinged with urgency, explained, "In the middle of the ocean, there's a submarine that has been capsized. The pressure from the oil shot us to the surface." Sam, impressed by Orin's bravery, extended his hand. Well, we'll take him downtown and check it out. Thank you. As Sam shook Orin's hand, a gesture of gratitude and respect, he guided Harry into the waiting police car. The people on the beach, their whispers growing louder, marveled at the young man who had risked everything to save the ocean. News trucks, their engines roaring, flooded the scene, reporters clamoring for a glimpse of the hero. Vicky Vale, her microphone clutched tightly, approached Orin, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Just moments ago, a young man risked his life to save the sea life and us from the tyrant that caused the oil spill. Here next to me is Arthur Curry. Arthur, can you tell us what exactly happened here? Orin, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins, recounted the events. Well, I was on a dive and I see this ship drilling. When they hit oil, the ship launched up. The man that I captured was outside of the ship, directing the drill. That's when the pressure gushed us out to the surface. Vicky, her smile widening, exclaimed, "You're some sort of Aquaman." Well, there you have it. The sea life will be safe, and we will too. Thanks to Arthur Curry, our real-life Aquaman. I'm Vicky Vale, reporting for 7 News. As the cameras rolled and the reporters clamored for more, Orin stood tall, his heart swelling with pride. He had done what needed to be done, risking everything to protect the ocean and the creatures that called it home. But even as the accolades poured in and the world hailed him as a hero, Orin knew that his journey was far from over. Atlantis, the lost city of his ancestors, lay waiting, its secrets and treasures guarded by forces that sought to exploit them. And he, Orin, grandson of Poseidon, would stop at nothing to fulfill his destiny, to claim his rightful place as king and protector of the seas. For in the depths of the ocean, a new chapter was unfolding, a tale of courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bond between man and nature. The night embraced Lighthouse Point, its inky darkness broken only by the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. Orin sat on the beach, his eyes fixed on the vast expanse of the ocean, his mind lost in thought. The weight of his destiny pressed down upon him, the knowledge that his life would never be the same once he claimed his rightful place in Atlantis. All right, he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible above the whisper of the wind. Let's go for a swim. With a deep breath, Orin plunged into the Pacific Ocean, the cool water enveloping him like a second skin. He swam deeper and deeper, his powerful strokes propelling him through the depths. He tried to retrace the route he had taken when he pursued Harry, his mind grasping for familiar landmarks in the endless blue. Suddenly, a presence, intangible, yet undeniable, surrounded him. Orin froze, his senses on high alert. He scanned his surroundings, searching for the source of the sensation. A gentle tap on his shoulder startled him, and he spun to his left, his heart pounding in his chest. Nothing. Only the endless expanse of water greeted his gaze. Then, from the corner of his eye, a flicker of movement caught his attention. He turned to his right, and there, floating before him, was Amla, the mermaid who had guided him on his journey. Her laughter, musical and enchanting, bubbled through the water. "Hi," Orin stammered, a sheepish grin spreading across his face. Amla, her eyes sparkling with mischief, swam closer. "Are you coming to save us?" Orin, his confidence faltering for a moment, admitted, "I hope I can, but I'm a little lost." Amla giggled, her laughter echoing through the depths. With a playful flip of her tail, she darted away, her voice trailing behind her. "Stay close. We have a long way to go." Orin, his heart racing with anticipation, propelled himself forward, matching Amla's speed as they swam towards Atlantis. As they moved through the water, the sea life around them came alive, swirling and dancing in a mesmerizing display of color and grace. Schools of fish, their scales glinting in the filtered sunlight, parted before them, creating a shimmering curtain of silver and gold. Dolphins, their sleek bodies cutting through the water with effortless precision, raced alongside them, their clicks and whistles a joyful symphony. Orin marveled at the beauty that surrounded him, the wonder of the ocean that he had always known but never truly appreciated until now. As he swam, his muscles aching with exertion, he felt a sense of purpose, a calling that went beyond his own desires and dreams. He was Orin, grandson of Poseidon, and he had a duty to fulfill, a destiny to embrace. And as he followed Amla through the depths, the lost city of Atlantis drawing ever closer, he knew that he would stop at nothing to save his people, to claim his rightful place as king and protector of the seas. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger, with challenges that would test his resolve and push him to the very limits of his abilities. But as he swam, the weight of his responsibility lifting from his shoulders, Orin knew that he was ready, that he would face whatever lay ahead with courage and determination. For in the depths of the ocean, a new chapter was unfolding, a tale of heroism and sacrifice, of the unbreakable bond between man and nature. And Orin, his heart filled with hope and purpose, was ready to embrace his destiny, to become the hero that the world needed, the savior of Atlantis, and all who called the ocean home. As Orin and Amla entered the city of Atlantis, a sense of awe and dismay washed over Orin. The once magnificent metropolis lay in ruins, its grandeur faded, its streets haunted by the shadows of a forgotten past. "What has happened to Atlantis?" Orin's voice, tinged with sorrow, echoed through the stillness. Amla, her eyes downcast, remained silent, the weight of the city's decline heavy on her shoulders. Orin, his gaze sweeping the streets, caught the furtive glances of the homeless, their eyes filled with a mixture of hope and despair. The duo pressed on, their destination an unassuming building that held the promise of answers. Orin, his brow furrowed with confusion, turned to Amla, seeking guidance. "Well, Orin, this is as far as I can take you." Amla's voice, soft and resigned, carried a note of finality. "What do I do now?" Orin's words, laced with uncertainty, hung heavy in the water. Amla, her eyes meeting his, pointed towards an abandoned structure, its sign faded and worn. "Go to the abandoned building with the sign that says, Cafareon. There you will find your answers." Orin, his heart pounding with trepidation, cast a hesitant glance at Amla before propelling himself towards the building, his strokes purposeful and determined. Inside the Cafareon coffee shop, the air thick with the weight of history, Orin's senses were immediately assaulted by a sound, its source unseen. A voice, ancient and wise, cut through the gloom. "You're here. You've come to save us." Nuada Silverarm, his eyes piercing, studied Orin with a mixture of hope and skepticism. Orin, his voice steady despite the uncertainty that gripped him, replied, "That's what I've been told." Nuada, his movements slow and deliberate, approached Orin, his presence commanding respect. "Thanatos is the evil that chokes the life from this once great city. Do you believe you can stop this?" Orin, his resolve unwavering, declared, "I want to help my people." Nuada's eyes narrowed, his voice sharp. "You do not know your people. There are things here that you are not prepared to know. What makes you think you can do this?" Orin, his voice rising with passion, countered, "I am the descendant of Poseidon. I must do what I can to aid my people. I made a decision to be here. Whether or not it's easy doesn't matter now." Nuada, his gaze softening, recognized the fire that burned within Orin, the determination that would change the fate of Atlantis. "Tell me about Thanatos," Orin demanded, his voice steady and strong. Nuada smirked, his eyes glinting with a mixture of amusement and respect. "Well then, the ruby he carries with him was bestowed upon him by Hades. It is a source of great power, which he uses to enslave your people. Fortunately, this source of great power can only be used for one spell at a time, so it will not come into play during your confrontation." Orin, his brow furrowed, pressed further. "How do I stop him if he's so powerful?" Nuada, his voice cryptic, replied, "He keeps the ruby on him at all times. The only way to nullify its power is to use your birthright." "What's my birthright?" Orin asked, confusion etched on his face. Nuada, a knowing smile playing at the corners of his mouth, answered, "You'll know when the time comes." With a motion towards the palace, Nuada's eyes sparkled with mischief. Orin, his mind racing, wondered aloud, "How do I get there?" Nuada chuckled, his laughter echoing through the abandoned coffee shop. Swim! Orin, a grin spreading across his face, prepared to depart. As he turned to leave, Nuada's voice, tinged with warning, stopped him in his tracks. You know, Thanatos isn't hated by all. Some of the denizens will tell you to go home. Orin, his voice ringing with conviction, declared, I am home. With those words, he propelled himself towards the palace, his heart filled with purpose and determination. Nuada, his eyes lifted to the heavens, smiled, knowing that the fate of Atlantis rested in the hands of a true hero, a descendant of Poseidon himself. As Orin swam through the palace courtyard, the ground beneath him shuddered, a violent tremor that sent shockwaves through the water. Buildings crumbled, their once majestic structures reduced to rubble in a matter of moments. Orin, his senses on high alert, scanned his surroundings, searching for the cause of the destruction. Amidst the chaos, an elderly woman caught his eye, her movements frantic as she tried to flee the falling debris. But her age betrayed her, her limbs too slow to carry her to safety. Orin, his heart pounding, surged forward, his powerful strokes propelling him towards the woman. With a burst of speed, he reached her just as a massive chunk of rubble hurtled towards them. Orin, his muscles straining, grabbed the woman and pulled her out of harm's way, his other hand shooting up to catch the falling debris before it could crush them both. The elderly woman, her eyes wide with shock and gratitude, looked up at her savior. As her gaze traveled from the rubble to Orin's leg, then upward to his belt, recognition dawned on her face. Thank you so much, she breathed, her voice trembling. I didn't even... Orin, his voice gentle, reassured her. It's all right. I'm glad I was here to save you. As the woman rose to her feet, her hand reached out, trembling fingers caressing Orin's face. She studied his features, her eyes brimming with emotion. It's you, she whispered, her voice thick with tears. You're here. Orin, confusion etched on his face, replied, Yes, it's me. The woman, her voice filled with wonder, continued. No, I mean, I remember you were born. Your little blonde hair was parted to the side, just as it is now. You had chubby cheeks and big blue eyes. She paused, her gaze dropping to the ground before meeting Orin's once more. The worst day was when I had to send you away. Orin, his mind reeling, processed her words. Realization crashed over him like a tidal wave, his heart swelling with a mixture of joy and disbelief. Mom? He breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. Atlanta, her arms opening wide, embraced her long-lost son, her tears mingling with the water that surrounded them. Oh my boy, I thought I'd never see you again. Orin, his own emotions threatening to overwhelm him, forced himself to focus on the task at hand. I'm afraid I don't have much time before I get spotted. I have been warned to take down Thanatos. Atlanta, her face etched with worry, cautioned him. Be careful, my son. He is very powerful. They hugged once more, their embrace a silent promise of love and support. Orin, his mind racing, pulled back, his eyes searching his mother's face. I just need to know one thing, he said, his voice steady despite the urgency that gripped him. Atlanta, her gaze locked with his, waited, her heart pounding in her chest. Where is the palace? The question hung heavy in the water, a reminder of the mission that lay ahead. Orin, his determination unwavering, knew that he had to act fast, to strike, while he still had the element of surprise. But even as he prepared to face the challenges that lay ahead, he couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder, a profound gratitude for the miracle that had brought him face to face with the mother he had never known. For in that moment, amidst the rubble and the chaos, Orin had found a piece of himself, a connection to his past that would forever shape his future. And as he set his sights on the palace, his heart filled with a fierce determination to save his people, to claim his rightful place as the protector of Atlantis, he knew that he carried with him the love and strength of his mother, a bond that would never be broken. In the depths of the palace, the leaders of the underwater kingdoms gathered, their faces etched with concern as they discussed the state of their nations. Thanatos, his gaze fixed on the city beyond, toyed with the jewel in his hands, its facets catching the dim light of the room. Ikula, her voice heavy with worry, spoke first. King Thanatos, our state is in complete disarray. The people are ill and unable to receive proper vaccinations. Queen Cora nodded, her expression grim. Aye, our state is much the same. We need better attention and the cooperation of Atlantis for our people. Marlowe of Karak, his tone measured, added, Yes, even though we are separate states, we are one nation. Sona, her eyes flashing with defiance, rose from her seat. There is absolutely no need for the continuous construction of Atlantis. The resources required can easily be diverted to our states to improve our people. Thanatos, his anger igniting like a spark in dry tinder, whirled towards Sona, his eyes narrowed to slits. The room fell silent, the tension palpable as Thanatos stalked towards the outspoken leader, his steps measured and menacing. You do not decide what I do, Thanatos roared, his voice reverberating off the walls. I decide what this nation needs. As Thanatos raised his hand, poised to strike Sona, the doors burst open, and a peasant stumbled into the room, his eyes wide with fear. Pardon me, your grace, the peasant stammered, his voice trembling. Thanatos, his fury redirected, rounded on the intruder. Bow when you enter the room, you filthy peasant! The peasant dropped to his knees, his forehead touching the cold stone floor. Thanatos, his voice dripping with disdain, demanded, What is it that makes you believe you can interrupt these proceedings? The peasant, his words stumbling over each other, blurted out, Your Grace, I have laid eyes upon the lost prince Orin. The room fell silent, the weight of the revelation hanging heavy in the air. Thanatos, his eyes blazing with fury, exploded. What? The peasant, his body quaking with fear, groveled at Thanatos' feet. Orin, sir, son of the great king and queen, Atlan and Atlana. Thanatos, his voice laced with venom, snarled, I know who he is. Ikula, her brow furrowed with confusion, spoke up. I thought he died when you took over. Thanatos, his demeanor shifting from fury to an eerie calm, strode towards the peasant, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Rise, peasant! The peasant, unnerved by the sudden change in Thanatos' mood, stumbled to his feet, his eyes darting nervously around the room. Thanatos, his voice smooth as silk, questioned, Where did you see Orin? The peasant, his voice barely above a whisper, replied, Out in the marketplace. Thanatos turned away, his gaze once again drawn to the window. He played with the jewel in his hands, its surface smooth and cool against his skin. The peasant, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes, allowed a small smile to tug at his lips, as the spell that bound him weakened ever so slightly. He's coming to save Atlantis and restore it to its former glory, the peasant whispered. His words meant only for himself. Thanatos, sensing the shift in the room, the weakening of his hold over the people, felt his fury reignite. The peasant, emboldened by the hope that now burned within him, continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. My family will be free of this tyranny. Thanatos, his movements swift and precise, closed the distance between himself and the peasant in a heartbeat. His hand shot out, gripping the peasant's throat, lifting him off the ground and slamming him against the wall. The peasant writhed in agony, his screams echoing in the reflection of Thanatos' eyes. Bring me the prince, Thanatos roared, his voice filled with a rage that threatened to consume them all. As the peasant's struggles weakened, his life slipping away beneath Thanatos' iron grip, the room fell silent once more, the weight of the king's command hanging heavy in the air. The leaders, their faces pale with fear, knew that the battle for Atlantis had only just begun, and that the fate of their nation rested in the hands of a long-lost prince, a man who held the power to change everything. The palace of Atlantis loomed before Orin, its gates a daunting barrier that seemed to mock his resolve. The entrance, a testament to the power and might of the kingdom, stood tall and imposing, its grandeur a stark contrast to the poverty and despair that plagued the city beyond. Guards, their faces etched with the weariness of their duties, patrolled the perimeter, their eyes scanning the crowds but never truly seeing. They moved with a mechanical precision, their minds numb to the suffering that surrounded them. Orin, his heart pounding in his chest, approached a merchant who stood lost in his work, his hands deftly sorting through a pile of seaweed. The prince, his mind racing with the enormity of the task before him, muttered to himself, "How am I going to pull this off?" His gaze drifted to a cage, its bars rusted and worn, that housed a group of men clad in tattered brown cloaks. Their faces, hidden beneath the hoods, spoke of a despair that ran deep, a hopelessness that had consumed them whole. Curiosity piqued. Orin turned to the merchant. "What are those men for?" The merchant, startled by the sudden intrusion, glanced over his shoulder, his eyes still glazed with the fog of his work. "Huh. Oh, them. Want one or two?" Orin, taken aback by the casual cruelty of the offer, stammered, No, I'm sorry. I was just wondering what they're doing in the cage." The merchant, his attention already drifting back to his task, replied with a shrug. "They're for extra help with whatever the king needs. Forced laborers, if you will." Orin, his mind reeling with the implications, pressed on. "Do the cages go inside?" The merchant, his tone laced with irritation, answered, "Of course. How else will they get inside the palace?" He turned, his eyes narrowing as he realized the true nature of Orin's questions. "So, are you going to buy anything or keep asking mundane questions?" But when he looked back, ready to confront the inquisitive stranger, he found only empty space where Orin had stood moments before. The prince, his plan forming in his mind, had vanished into the crowd, a ghost in the throng of bodies that swarmed the palace gates. As he moved through the masses, Orin's resolve hardened, his determination to infiltrate the palace and confront Thanatos growing with each step. He knew that the fate of Atlantis, the future of his people, rested on his shoulders, and he would not rest until he had fulfilled his destiny. The merchant, oblivious to the significance of the encounter, turned back to his work, his mind already drifting to the next customer, the next sale. But Orin, his heart pounding with a newfound purpose, slipped through the gates, his eyes fixed on the palace that loomed before him, a symbol of the tyranny he had come to overthrow. In the heart of the palace of Atlantis, the guards herded the slaves like cattle, their voices harsh and commanding as they barked orders. The slaves, their faces gaunt and their eyes hollow, lined up for inspection, their bodies trembling with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. Orin, his heart pounding beneath the tattered brown cloak that concealed his identity, slipped into the line, his movements measured and cautious. He stood at the end, his eyes downcast, as he blended seamlessly with the other slaves. "All ye slaves line up for inspections and assignments," the guard bellowed, his voice echoing off the marble walls. As the guards continued their relentless commands, a figure appeared at the top of the stairs, his presence commanding instant silence. Thanatos, his face a mask of cruel indifference, descended the steps, his movements deliberate and menacing. The atmosphere shifted, the air growing heavy with a sense of foreboding. Thanatos paced before the slaves, his eyes scanning their faces, his voice a cold whisper that sent shivers down their spines. "All of you are going to die. Not today, not tomorrow, or soon. To repay for my mercy, I need all of you to be alert." His gaze settled on the tallest and strongest of the slaves, his lips curling into a cruel smile. "I need this palace to shine all the way to the surface. Your blood and sweat will rebuild Atlantis to the glory it deserves." With a touch of his ruby, the slaves snapped to attention, their voices rising in unison. "Yes, King!" Orin, his mind reeling with the horror of what he witnessed, kept his eyes fixed on the ground, his heart heavy with the weight of his people's suffering. Thanatos continued his relentless pacing, doling out work assignments with a casual cruelty that left no room for mercy. As he stopped before Orin, his voice dripping with disdain, he spoke. "This scrawny one will work the fisheries." Orin remained silent, his jaw clenched as Thanatos moved on, his attention drawn to a more pressing matter. "Now that you all have your assignments, we have a more pressing issue. Before we can clean up Atlantis, we need to find someone named Orin. This disillusioned beast believes himself to be Prince of Atlantis. He will be easy to spot, as he is the only one with blonde hair and blue eyes." Thanatos leaned in close to the cloaked figure, his breath hot against Orin's face. "If you find him, Kill him. Orin's eyes widened beneath the cloak, his heart racing as he realized the danger he faced. Thanatos, his suspicion growing, demanded, "Remove your cloak!" Orin, his mind spinning with the need to act, remained silent, his body tense with anticipation. "You were awfully quiet, slave," Thanatos growled, his patience wearing thin. "Remove your cloak at once!" Orin shifted, his muscles coiled like a spring ready to strike. Thanatos, his anger boiling over, shouted, "What are you hiding, slave?" In a flash of movement, Orin tore off his cloak, his fist connecting with Thanatos' jaw in a sickening crunch. Thanatos staggered back, his eyes wide with shock and fury. "Guards, lock the door! It's Orin!" Chaos erupted as the guards rushed to obey, their weapons drawn and ready. Orin, his heart pounding, used the discarded cloak as a distraction, whirling it through the air as he knocked the guards aside with a series of swift, precise blows. Thanatos, his laughter tinged with madness, taunted, "You won't kill me." Orin, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins, replied, "I don't want to kill you. I want to save the people." Thanatos' laughter grew, the sound bouncing off the walls in a cacophony of cruelty. Orin, his eyes darting, spotted a window, a means of escape. With a powerful leap, he propelled himself towards it, his body twisting in midair as he crashed through the glass, the shards raining down around him like a crystal storm. As he landed on the other side, his heart racing and his mind reeling, Orin knew that the battle had only just begun. Thanatos, his fury unbridled, would stop at nothing to see him dead, to crush the hope that he represented. But Orin, his resolve unwavering, would not rest until he had saved his people, until he had claimed his rightful place as the true king of Atlantis. In the labyrinthine streets of Atlantis, Thanatos pursued Orin, his laughter echoing off the ancient walls. His fingers caressed the ruby, its surface pulsing with an otherworldly glow. With a whispered incantation, he summoned the Sharkmen, their forms materializing before him, a testament to the power he wielded. "Get him, you fools!" Thanatos bellowed, his voice laced with a cruel urgency. The Sharkmen, their bodies sleek and powerful, surged forward, their movements a blur of speed and precision. Orin, his eyes widening as he caught sight of them, muttered under his breath, "This might be an issue." But even as the Sharkmen closed in, a glimmer of hope appeared on the horizon. Loyal sea life, drawn by an ancient call, swarmed towards Orin, their forms a kaleidoscope of color and power. Sharks, whales, squids, and fish, both big and small, rallied to his side, their presence a comforting weight against the impending storm. Orin, his confidence growing with each passing moment, propelled himself forward, his movements fluid and graceful as he met his allies. Together, they turned to face the oncoming horde, their bodies poised for battle. Thanatos, his mind sharp and calculating, watched as his Sharkmen formed a U-shape, their formation guiding Orin into a trap of his own making. "That's it, Orin. Just a bit closer, you fool," he whispered, his voice dripping with anticipation. The battle erupted in a flurry of motion, Orin and his loyal fish engaging the Sharkmen in a dance of death. The water churned with the fury of their struggle, the cries of the fallen mingling with the clash of tooth and claw. But even as Orin fought, his heart pounding with the thrill of battle, the trap sprang shut. A cage, its bars pulsing with an eerie light, materialized around him, trapping him within its confines. Orin, his eyes wide with shock, threw himself against the bars, only to be thrown back by a searing bolt of magical energy. His body went limp, his mind slipping into unconsciousness as the cage held him fast. Thanatos, his eyes glinting with triumph, struck out at his own Sharkmen, his voice rising in a chant that sent shivers down the spines of all who heard it. With a final guttural cry, Thanatos sacrificed 3 of his loyal soldiers, their bodies disintegrating in a burst of dark energy. The air shimmered, the fabric of reality twisting and warping as Thanatos and his prize vanished, transported to the realm of nether space. As the battle faded, the streets of Atlantis fell silent once more, the only sound the gentle lapping of the waves against the ancient stones. But even as the city mourned the loss of its champion, a flicker of hope remained. a whisper on the lips of those who still believed in the power of the true king. For Orin, trapped in the clutches of his enemy, the fight was far from over. His destiny, written in the stars and the tides, would not be denied, and he would stop at nothing to reclaim his birthright and save his people from the tyranny that threatened to consume them all. In the heart of nether space, Thanatos arrived, the realm pulsing with a low, magical hum that echoed through the entrance hall. Whispers, ethereal and haunting, drifted in and out, their origins unknown. The Sharkmen, their muscles straining, pulled the cage that held Orin, their steps heavy and labored. Orin, his voice tinged with defiance, called out, "Where are you taking me?" Thanatos, his lips curling into a smirk, glanced back, his eyes glinting with malice. Orin, desperate for aid, reached out to the sea life, his plea carried on the currents of the realm. But Thanatos, his voice dripping with disdain, cut through the silence. "Don't bother. This realm is mine and mine alone. Nothing comes without my knowledge or permission." Orin, his teeth grinding, gripped the bars of the cage, his knuckles turning white with the force of his anger. As they ventured deeper into the realm, the air grew colder, the chill seeping into their bones. The Sharkmen, their movements sluggish, slowed noticeably, their strength sapped by the unnatural cold. They emerged from the entrance halls, the landscape before them a stark contrast to the darkness they had left behind. White, like freshly fallen snow, stretched out before them, its purity almost blinding. Thanatos, his voice filled with a twisted sense of pride, announced, "Home, sweet home." But as they pressed on, the light faded, replaced by an inky darkness that seemed to swallow all hope. Thanatos led them to a pit, its depths unfathomable, and an ominous chamber that loomed above it. Orin, his voice heavy with dread, muttered, "Ugh, what's next?" Thanatos, his movements deliberate and cruel, sacrificed one of the Sharkmen, his body dissolving into nothingness as a demonstration of what awaited Orin. The cage, suspended above the pit, swayed gently, a macabre pendulum counting down the moments until Orin's fate was sealed. Thanatos, his back to Orin, approached the altar above the pit, the ruby clutched in his hand. As he began to chant, the ruby rose, suspended by an unseen force, its power palpable in the air. "I beseech you, power, to be my own, to finally contain this nuisance that threatens my power over Atlantis." Orin, desperate and determined, strained against the bars, his muscles bulging with the effort. But the magic that held him was too strong, its grip unyielding. Thanatos, his voice rising in a crescendo of power, continued, "With this last request, my power in your name will be so great, none shall dare challenge it." The ground shook, the realm itself trembling under the weight of Thanatos' words. Orin, his heart pounding, redoubled his efforts to break free, his mind racing with the possibilities of what lay ahead. "I ask of you to banish this Orin, grandson of Poseidon, to the surface. The threat he poses to us is too great, but we may still have use for him in the future." Orin, his eyes widening, repeated the name Poseidon, the word a prayer on his lips. As he spoke, a trident, its form shimmering and translucent, appeared outside the cage, beckoning to him. Orin, his heart soaring with hope, reached out, his fingers closing around the weapon, feeling the power of his birthright flowing through him. With a mighty heave, Orin shattered the cage, the bars crumbling under the force of his newfound strength. Thanatos, startled by the sudden noise, spun around, only to find Orin standing before him, the trident pointed at his throat. "Ha! You're weak!" Thanatos spat, his voice dripping with disdain. With a swift kick, Thanatos launched himself at Orin, his hands grasping for the ruby. Orin, his reflexes honed by years of training, spun, using the momentum to knock the ruby from its perch. The gem clattered to the ground, its light dimming as it rolled away. Orin and Thanatos grappled, their bodies locked in a deadly dance of punches and kicks. They separated, each landing on opposite sides of the chamber, Thanatos near the trident and Orin near the ruby. Thanatos, his eyes wild with desperation, lunged for the trident, his fingers closing around its shaft. But as he touched it, the weapon dissipated, reforming in Orin's hands, a testament to his true power. Orin, the trident clutched tightly, tackled Thanatos, the prongs of the weapon pressing against his throat. Thanatos, his strength fading, slipped into unconsciousness, his body going limp in Orin's grasp. When Thanatos awoke, he found himself chained between two pillars, his connection to the ruby diminished. His eyes, wide with fear, darted around the chamber until they settled on Orin, standing tall above the ruby, the trident in his hand. "Good, you're awake," Orin said, his voice calm and steady. With a single touch of the trident, the ruby liquefied, smoke rising from its surface as its power drained away. Thanatos, his voice weak and defeated, cried out, "No!" His body began to glow, the light emanating from within as his power was stripped away, leaving him a shell of his former self. Orin, his voice filled with determination, declared, "I know just the place for you." The trident vanished, its purpose fulfilled. Orin, his heart swelling with pride, whispered to himself, "Poseidon." With a smile on his face, Orin turned, swimming towards the entrance of the realm. As he passed the remaining sharkmen, they stood in silence, their heads bowed in reverence to the true king of Atlantis. And as Orin emerged from the darkness, the weight of his destiny settled upon his shoulders, a mantle he would wear with honor and courage. For he was the grandson of Poseidon, the rightful heir to the throne, and he would stop at nothing to restore Atlantis to its former glory. As Orin swam through the streets of Atlantis, the city seemed to come alive, its once darkened corners now bathed in a vibrant, pulsing light. The citizens, their faces etched with hope and joy, bustled about, their hands working tirelessly to restore their beloved home to its former glory. Cheers and praises erupted from the crowds as Orin passed, their voices rising in a chorus of adulation. He waved, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude, as he made his way towards the palace. At the top of the stairs, Atlanta stood tall, her figure regal and imposing against the backdrop of the throne. Her eyes, filled with love and pride, met Orin's as he approached. "You have lifted the spell over Atlantis and the seven seas," she declared, her voice ringing out across the gathered throng. "These are your people now." The crowd, their numbers swelling with each passing moment, chanted in unison, their voices a thunderous roar. "Hail, Prince Orin!" Orin, his brow furrowed in confusion, glanced at the crowd before turning back to his mother. "Prince?" Atlanta, her smile warm and knowing, shook her head. "King, lead with benevolence and wisdom, my son." She extended her hand, the golden trident gleaming in the light. Orin, his fingers closing around the weapon, felt a surge of power and purpose flow through him. He stepped forward, taking his place before the throne, and raised the trident high, the cheers of his people washing over him like a tidal wave. As the credits rolled, the scene shifted, the opulence of Atlantis fading away to reveal the stark, oppressive walls of Arkham Asylum. In a cramped cell, Harry sat hunched over a phone, his voice low and urgent. "Listen, Doc, I'm telling you the guy underwater is that blonde kid from the Devils," he hissed, his eyes darting around the room. Dr. Deering's voice, tinged with exasperation, crackled through the receiver. "I'm starting to understand why you're where you are now." Harry, his face contorting with barely contained rage, spat, "I didn't want to abort the mission. There is still more to do, still more to find. I will not stop till I have what is mine. Just do what I say, and we will have glory handed to us." There was a pause, a moment of hesitation, before Dr. Deering spoke again, his voice low and uncertain. "What shall I do?" Harry, his lips curling into a cruel smile, whispered, "Hurt someone close to him." The camera pulled back, revealing the name on the cell door. Harry Black, aka Black Manta. As it panned further, it became clear that Black Manta's cell was nestled between two others, each housing a figure of equal infamy. To the right, the name Lex Luthor, aka Green Skull, was etched into the metal, a reminder of the brilliant mind turned twisted and corrupt. And to the left, the words, "Unknown aka the Joker," sent a chill down the spine, the identity of the occupant shrouded in mystery and madness. As the scene faded to black, the weight of the revelation settled heavy in the air. Black Manta, once a figure of power and ambition, now found himself imprisoned in Arkham Asylum, surrounded by the most depraved and dangerous minds the world had ever known. But even as the walls of his cell closed in around him, Harry's mind raced with plans and schemes, his hunger for power and revenge undiminished by his fall from grace. For he knew that this was only the beginning, a temporary setback in his quest for domination. And as he sat in the darkness, his eyes gleaming with a feverish intensity, he vowed that he would rise again, that he would find a way to claim what was rightfully his. For in the twisted halls of Arkham Asylum, anything was possible, and the line between sanity and madness was a thin and fragile thing indeed.